Hello, everyone. Welcome back. In the shadowy, unregulated corners of the internet, ideologies are born far from the eyes of mainstream society. Some are harmless, others turn deadly. This is where the Zizian Cult began, not in a remote compound, but in the digital ether, a space where highly intelligent, isolated individuals found common ground in shared fears and extreme beliefs. With that being said, let's get right into it. The Zizians are a group built on a foundation of radical veganism and a profound, all-consuming dread of an AI apocalypse. They believe modern society is a corrupt system heading for a catastrophic collapse, and they see themselves as separate, with a superior intellect preparing for the inevitable end. Their alleged leader is a figure known as Ziz, or Jack LaSoda, who used she/her pronouns and commanded a small but loyal following. Their doctrine wasn't just about escape, it was about action. Their path led them offline into the real world to a series of violent and tragic events across the United States. A map of their journey traces a chilling trail of at least 6 killings in California, Pennsylvania, and Vermont. Among the victims were a U.S. Border Patrol agent and even the parents of one of their own members. These were only a few acts of a group convinced of their own righteousness, moving anonymously from state to state, leaving a trail of violence and unsolved cases in their wake. The FBI and local law enforcement agencies were seemingly chasing ghosts, struggling to connect what were initially thought to be unrelated murders across multiple jurisdictions. Surprisingly, the hunt ended in a quiet, unexpected location, Frostburg, Maryland. In February 2025, authorities there apprehended LaSoda and 2 key members, Michelle Zygo and Daniel Blank.
They call themselves the Zizians, a dangerous and bizarre Berkeley, California cult said to be tied to 6 murders across 3 states. Their leader, Jack Ziz LaSoda, now behind bars after a string of incidents involving the 33-year-old and other cult members, including a horrific attack with a samurai sword.
He says, "I'm dying." I saw him with a samurai sword sticking through his back and came out his chest about here. Had a flap of his face cut off and blood.
Curtis Lynn, Ziz's landlord, was allegedly attacked 3 years ago in Vallejo, California, after he threatened to evict Ziz and the others living on his land.
They jumped him, they used a samurai sword, and they stabbed him repeatedly, including in the eye. He fought back, even though he was grievously injured. Gunshots were fired, and he ended up killing one of his attackers and injuring another.
After losing one eye, Curtis would miraculously survive. But 3 days before he was set to testify against his attackers, he was jumped by yet another Zizian cult member, say police. This time, he wasn't so lucky.
This time he lost his life. And this is the same exact location where Vallejo police say a guy named Maximilian Snyder, another member of the Zizians allegedly, had been seen lying in wait for Kurt Lynn to show up. And when he does show up, he then apparently attacked him a number of times and stabbed him. And when our victim was lying on the ground, attacked him again.
But other murders tied to the Zizians include a New Year's Eve shooting 3 years ago of a cult member's parents, Richard and Rita Zachko, at their home in Pennsylvania, and most recently the death of a Border Patrol agent, David Milland, after a shootout in Vermont. Investigators haven't revealed what's driving the violence, but the Zizians are said to advocate for veganism, and most members identify as transgender. They are also concerned with the impact of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, they're like militant vegans, allegedly, who believe that it's either their way or the highway. They don't like the way technology has taken over the world, and they're really doubtful and leery of AI and what its implications are. So they've been going all over the country and taking part in protests and, according to prosecutors, violence.
The alleged ringleader Ziz had been on the run before authorities caught up with her and 2 other cult members weeks ago in western Maryland. Police say members were living in a box truck reportedly filled with weapons, including a gun with connections to the Pennsylvania murders.
It's very clear that there's a lot of parents who are very concerned about their sons and daughters who are members of this alleged cult, saying that, they grew up as fine young individuals, men and women, only to be allegedly brainwashed by this fringe group.
For now, investigators have only charged Ziz and the other 2 members with obstruction, trespassing, and firearms crimes. All 3 cult members are being held without bail, the judge citing concerns about Lesotho being a flight risk and a danger to public safety.
That will give the feds and each individual state the time to kind of build their respective cases here in California and in Vermont, Pennsylvania. I mean, it's going to be probably a all-out legal fight to see who gets at them first, but it'll probably be whoever has the most serious charges at this point.
The arrest was almost mundane, beginning with charges of trespassing and obstructing law enforcement, coupled with a charge for handgun possession. However, federal agents soon realized this was no simple local incident. They had stumbled upon the core of the Zizian mystery. The 3 were ordered to be held without bail in the Allegheny County Detention Center. Since their arrest, the case has grown to be much more complex than expected. Prosecutors in Maryland filed a superseding indictment in mid-2025 with new allegations including felony drug offenses like LSD possession based on evidence seized during their arrest.
The alleged leader of that cult-like group known as the Zizians was indicted by a grand jury in Maryland on weapons charges. That group has been linked to multiple killings, including the shooting death of border agent David Chris Mayland in Vermont earlier this year. Jack Lesotho, who is also known as Ziz, was indicted by a grand jury in Maryland last week for illegal firearm and ammunition possession. Lesotho, along with other suspected Zizians, Daniel Blank and Michelle Zajko, were arrested in the state back in February. They have all pleaded not guilty to trespassing and illegal possession charges. Zajko is accused of providing the guns used to kill Agent Mayland in Coventry back in January. Teresa Youngblood is also facing federal weapons charges connected to that fatal shooting. In addition to Mayland's death, the so-called Zizians have been connected to killings in Pennsylvania and California.
The Maryland charges are being prosecuted in state court, but the investigation is deeply entwined with sprawling federal probes across the country. Michelle Zajko now faces federal firearms charges in Vermont, accused of purchasing weapons used in the killing of a Border Patrol agent. Lesotho was also federally indicted in Maryland on a charge of being the fugitive in possession of firearms and ammunition. In court, the legal proceedings have been unusual, with both Lesotho and Zajko attempting to address the judge directly, sometimes speaking over their own attorneys. Their defense has argued that prosecutors are intentionally delaying the Maryland trial to allow federal authorities more time to build cases in other jurisdictions, a claim the state's attorney has vehemently denied. As of late 2025, the 3 Zizians are awaiting a joint trial in Maryland, which could be scheduled for as late as December.
Members of the violent cult-like group will be tried together on trespassing charges in Maryland. The group known as the Zizians, they're linked to 6 murders across 3 different states. Back in February, Jack Lesotho and 2 associates were arrested in Cumberland. A man called police after they camped, or asked to at least camp, on his property for a month. Defense attorneys claim that prosecutors are trying to slow down this case while they investigate the Zizian group.
While key members of the group, including Teresa Youngblood and Maximilian Snyder, face murder charges in other states, the Maryland defendants have not yet been charged with the homicides. The capture in Maryland was the key that unlocked the mystery of a multi-state killing spree. As federal agents continue to investigate the group's activities and motives, the Zizian case has become a stark and unsettling reminder, highlighting that the most dangerous threats can sometimes begin as nothing more than a few lines of code and a shared, radical belief system in the vast hidden world of the internet. The Zizian Cult is a showcase of the power inside digital echo chambers. What do you think can be done to prevent online radicalization from turning into real-world violence? Do you believe society is doing enough to monitor these extreme ideologies before it's too late? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all for watching, and as usual, if you're a fan of urban legends, folklore, unsolved mysteries, cold cases, and all things mysterious, make sure you like and subscribe to the channel.
Joining us now is renowned cult expert and deprogrammer. Families reach out to him when they need help staging an intervention. Rick Allen Ross, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for taking the time. All right, so how do you get them out? How long does it take?
Dan, it's a process. It's much like a drug or alcohol intervention. It can take 3 or 4 days working with the family and the cult victim. And as Sarah Edmondson alluded to, it's an educational process that is making that person aware of how cults manipulate people, specifically their techniques of manipulation, and defining what a destructive cult is, which is 3 core characteristics that I would say are the nucleus for any definition I've seen of a destructive cult. 1, you have a dictatorial leader like Larry Ray or like Keith Raniere. 2, they use identifiable coercive persuasion techniques to gain undue influence, as we've heard. And then 3, if it's a destructive cult, they exploit and do harm to the members. And that may vary by degree from group to group. So some groups are much more destructive than others. Ray and Raniere were at the top of the scale. They exemplify the most destructive and heinous kind of cults that you could encounter.
What is the success rate? I mean, so you get a family, you get someone who's been in a cult. I would assume there are some failures too.
I would say about typically 3 out of 10 people that I work with will decide to leave typically in the first day, and despite their family's pleas and quite frankly, begging them to stay. So 7 out of 10 at the end of the intervention will decide that they want to leave the group or take a break from the group. Now, some of the people that leave in the first day may eventually leave largely because of the information that's been shared by the family and I during that day. So it's a process. What you're hearing from people talking about Larry Ray and Keith Raniere is what is called coercive persuasion. This was first identified by psychologist, professor at MIT, Edgar Schein. It's a 3-stage process, Dan. First, you break people down. And that can be done through, browbeating them, putting them on the hot seat in a kind of attack therapy, humiliating them, forcing them into false confessions. But your goal is to break them down, or as Schein would say, unfreeze them from where they're at. And then second, you manipulate them within an isolated environment. You socially isolate them, you control the environment, and then you implement the change that you want. And then finally, you lock them in, or as Schein would say, you refreeze them. And again, this is dependent on social isolation, peer reinforcement from other group members, and that's how it's done. And no matter what the group leader is, whether it's Raniere, whether it's Ray, they use these same techniques of manipulation. So the education in the process of an intervention is to make the person aware of how they've been manipulated.
I've got to believe that for parents, family members, loved ones, it's got to be maddening, right? I mean, I'll bet that when you're sitting there, that some of them just want to yell, right, at the person and say, hey, hey, hey. And I'm sure you have to calm the family members down, too, to say, look, there's a process here. We have to do this the right way.
Well, in my book, Cults Inside Out, I lay it all out in a chapter on coping strategies, preparation for an intervention, and intervention. And Dan, you're exactly right. I have to coach the families and help them to understand what they can say and must not say in the intervention. And you don't want to shame a person in an intervention. You want to recognize that they are a victim and that they have been preyed upon by a psychopath like Larry Ray or like Keith Raniere. And so you want to make it as easy as possible for them to navigate out. So you don't say, hey, how come you can't see this? Or what were you thinking when you are involved in this group?
Thank you for watching. Go to newsnationnow.com to find News Nation on your cable provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of News Nation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.